say Clash of the Champions or Night of Champions. Easy slip-ups to make on this show, but it is Clash of Champions.
Well, at least it's not Summerfest.
Oh, that's true. I don't think we'll make that gaffe.
No.
But this is our show going into Sunday's card from Indianapolis, Indiana. And before we chat about that, I want to do a quick rewind because this past weekend, Smash Wrestling held 3 shows with some of the talent from Progress Wrestling. And Jimmy, you were, I guess I would say front and center, though that's not the role you want to have. But I'm always just amazed when I go to some of these shows and the reaction Jimmy Corderas gets. The biggest babyface in Canada.
Well, it is. It's very humbling. I mean, like, I've always said that the referee should never be a focus and stuff like that, and I still believe that to this day, but I don't know. I guess
you're a legend to some of these people.
I guess being the hometown kid, kind of kid. What am I saying here, kid? Being the hometown old fart kind of gets over here, I guess. I don't know.
What were some of your highlights, whether it be matches you were involved with or just got to see over the couple of nights? Myself and Wei, we were there Saturday night, which is a really fun show. Crowd was super hot for this show, and that was 3+ hours. But some great stuff on the show I saw. But what stood out for you?
Just the guys from Progress were so really, really good guys and really passionate. You can feel the passion. You got to talk to Jack Gallagher, and what a really good this guy's, he's got it, and he understands.
And he seems like someone, like we saw the Cruiserweights introduced on Monday, and I know it wasn't overwhelming to everyone. I feel Jack Gallagher, he has such a personality about himself that I feel he's really going to succeed in this if given that opportunity. Yeah,
exactly, which is one of the reasons why I was glad he wasn't introduced with the rest and kind of lost in the shuffle sort of thing. All the guys that showed up, the London Riot guys, Mark Andrews, who...
I thought Mark Andrews and Scotty O'Shea, they had a great match really early, and then Gallagher and Mike Rollins followed them and did a different match completely.
Exactly.
Which I thought worked so well. Both worked in different ways.
Yeah, thank you, Jack and Rollins, for blowing me up.
That was the funniest spot.
My goodness.
Where they're doing just a million reversals, and then Jimmy was just following them, and your pace was incredible, Jimmy.
I tried to keep up. At one point, I just said, you know what, do I even bother counting anymore? It was just, it got to that point.
Yeah, you were actually timing them out pretty well.
It was fun, though. It was a lot of fun, and it was different, and it was interesting because the crowd, even though it was that your usual indie smash wrestling indie crowd, smash holes as they like to call them, it almost felt very Full Sail-ish with the chanting and all that sort of stuff. I know there were people there that came from Hong Kong, people that came from England to attend this thing.
I chatted with people from Hong Kong.
It's amazing, but thank you guys, Progress, and you guys are class act, man.
Yeah, they're a great promotion out of the UK, and of course our friends at Smash Wrestling who run monthly. Pretty much their next shows are coming up later on in October. They have back-to-back shows coming up in Etobicoke. But we get now to Clash of Champions. Let's start right at the top. Kevin Owens against Seth Rollins for the Universal title. I feel like they have not fully committed to this Seth Rollins turn with the Triple H attack on him, costing him the championship, giving it to Owens, and that Rollins is kind of in this in-between spot at the moment going into this match.
It almost feels like, to me, I kind of agree with that, because watching it, like somebody messaged me again on anti-social media Monday, says, was this the beginning of the Seth Rollins babyface turn? And I'm saying, it already happened, but at the same time, it almost feels like they're trying to create that Stone Cold Steve Austin kind of persona where you really haven't changed anything. You were a heel. This is how you worked as a heel. You're going to work the same way as a babyface and just like try to be a badass kind of thing. So that's the way it's kind of feeling to me, but I don't know if it's getting across well with the audience.
Well, you've also run into this, like the big story is Triple H and eventually having the explanation behind his actions, which you haven't gotten at this point. So this feels almost as though we're in the middle of a story with this pay-per-view coming up. And until Hunter returns to television, you're kind of in this limbo, because that was the pressing issue coming out that night on Raw. And it really hasn't been addressed all that much since in the last 3 weeks.
No, and I get the whole idea of creative liberties. It is professional wrestling, so you let certain things slide logically. But for Stephanie McMahon to keep saying it weekly, I don't know why Hunter did what he did. Do these people not kind of, is there no pillow talk?
Oh, geez.
I mean, like, I don't know. Like, what the hell do they not?
Maybe it's WWE's Brangelina. It's just going to out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere, man.
News could break.
Is Hunter spending most of his time in Orlando? Is that what it is? I don't know. They haven't talked. I don't know. Just from a logic standpoint, I thought we'd at least get an appearance by Hunter to, even if it was just to say, I have my reasons for doing what I'm doing, they'll become apparent soon enough.
Well, could that be this Sunday that Hunter shows up to help Owens retain the title and further whatever's involved with Hunter and Rollins? Or is it going to be too early for that? Because bringing Hunter back, you have to hit that button and go with the Hunter-Rollins match, which they could hold off for a long time.
I mean, actually, you've got two built-in matches, I think. Here is where if Hunter does show up on Sunday to try to, upset the apple cart, so to speak, and cost Seth Rollins the match, you can actually have a Roman Reigns come out because he has an issue with Hunter as well. So now you've got actually potentially two matches for Hunter to have, one with Reigns, again, a rematch basically, but and then that could lead to the Seth Rollins match, which everybody's pretty much, I guess, waiting for.
I guess you'd be pretty stunned if anyone but Kevin Owens comes out of this as champion on Sunday.
I would be. I mean, this soon. I mean, it would make no sense to actually flip the title right now.
Yeah, I feel Owens, you have a lot of mileage in as champion. I don't think there's any way we're seeing a title change on Sunday.
And I like the little subtleties. Kevin Owens is not only great with little subtle stuff on the microphone, but now that he comes out in a suit, which is completely foreign to him and completely out of character, just those little touches just add to his great heel persona. And
I feel they have set the table for such a great feud, which I've already thrown the idea out with Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho, that when Sami Zayn did the promo and stating, one day Kevin Owens is going to turn on you and show his true colors. I think for that to be the Survivor Series main event, if you want Owens to get booed in Toronto, I think Chris Jericho in this one last run for the title, and that's how it's built. One more chance at the title or else he never challenges again against a guy that's turned on him, where they have built this up so well. When Owens does turn on Jericho, I feel it will be so effective because they've been great together. Yeah. And that could be a great Survivor Series main event. I think so too, and it's built in, and they could capitalize on it if the WWE understands the dynamic between I don't know if it's a friendly rivalry between Quebec and Ontario or even just Quebec and the rest of Canada. I mean, that I think lends itself to, like you said, if you want to get Kevin Owens booed, he could just, crow about how much. You build the match as the referendum.
Ooh, that's cool.
Jericho's referendum.
Not that anybody outside of Canada would get it, because you can't call it Brexit here. What would we call Quebexit?
Lots of marketing ideas here from both of us. Roman Reigns will take on Rusev for the U.S. title. It has been promised this time it will take place. Any chance of a title flip here? Because I would expect, with Reigns beating Owens last week in the cage match on Raw, that he will very much be inserted into the main event picture coming out of this. The only question is whether it is with a title or they get out of it and it stays on Rusev.
No, I prefer it to stay on Rusev. I've enjoyed Rusev as the U.S. champion. I think it works for him. It's one of those built-in things where you have a foreigner holding the United States championship. It makes perfect sense. I like the fact that Lana is present but not very involved, a la Maurice, who does get very much involved. So they're two different seconds or valets or whatever you want to call them. But it makes more sense to me for Rusev to retain the title after Sunday, and for Roman Reigns to be, again, frustrated or whatever, screwed over, however it happens, and like John, the money is always in the chase for the babyface, even though it's going to be interesting to see if Roman Reigns does actually get cheered against the foreigner holding the U.S. championship.
Yeah, and this is also one of those difficult shows because the next Raw pay-per-view is the Hell in a Cell show. So theoretically, you don't want to just be putting new programs together if you're going to be doing a Hell in a Cell, whether it's one or two cell matches you do next month. You would figure one of them will be the title match, and whether that's Owens, Rollins, and Reigns together or whatever combination of that. I almost am getting a little too much of the three-ways. I think that we're just doing them to death at this point, but that does kind of feel like the direction the title program is going on Raw.
Yeah, and they've already got the three-way with the women's match too, so And you've got the three-way coming up on the SmackDown pay-per-view with John Cena, Dean Ambrose, and AJ Styles. It's this weird kind of thing where all of a sudden it's like high school. It's a cool thing to do for a little while. It's like wrestling moves. The one I've been watching, and I know a little off topic here, but what I'm seeing a lot of every week on television now is the low bridge. Mm-hmm. You know, somebody charging somebody, pull down the top rope, they go over the top. That happens like at least 3 or 4 times a show, minimum.
Yeah. You know? And leads to the always in demand suicide dive.
And then right immediately after, can he get back in the match? We'll be right back after this commercial. Yeah.
As you mentioned, the three-way for the women's title, this is a match that has changed weekly of what they have announced. I can't go through all the iterations of this match, but it ends with Charlotte, Sasha Banks, and Bayley for the women's title. I do believe Charlotte retains here, and I think that this could be your second Cell match next month with your first ever women's Hell in a Cell match for the title.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting if they go that direction. I'm always like sketchy, you know, in a mindset where, do you want to go that far with the women? Do you take them in a hardcore direction with cage matches? That sort of stuff. I'm kind of on the fence with that one. I don't know if women need to be...
You're on the Hell in a Cell fence on that one.
Yeah, I'm clearly on the side, not on top. I got a fear of height, so... yeah, I don't know if it goes in that direction. I kind of like what you said, though, that, you know, that Charlotte retains, but at the same time, it feels kind of weird to me because I'm not sure if the last week's finish with the double pin that everybody was talking about, it almost feels like, since it wasn't addressed at all throughout the whole week, I mean, if it was something that was intentional, I would think that it would be addressed somewhere on the website, somewhere, you know.
Or just have quickly Corey Graves just makes a mention, just something as simple as whose shoulders were down. There was nothing. There was no indication of it. And whether it was planned or not, they got their out the next week to turn this into a three-way. Mm-hmm. I mean, my thinking last week was, why would you just trivialize Bayley losing if it wasn't for a purpose? I mean, Dana could have lost that fall to Sasha and then be blamed by Charlotte. That seems like it would fit better into the story. But you're right, there was no mention of it at all, but that was their way to get this into a three-way match on Sunday, which... I don't know if Bayley needs to be necessarily in this position already. Right. I don't think anyone expects her to win that title. And as you said, it's the chase that people will get into with someone like Bayley. And I don't think anyone's expecting her to leave with the title.
No.
And if there is going to be a Cell match coming out of this, I see it more as Charlotte and Sasha to end that feud if they go that way next month.
Right, and it kind of lends itself to the depth of the women on Raw as opposed to on SmackDown, where I think they've taken the time to develop more women on SmackDown, like have had a presence on television, been able to develop their characters a little bit for the audience, whereas on Raw we have really just 4 ladies who are getting any kind of time whatsoever. And I know coming up, again, foreshadowing, we got a little bit of Nia Jax versus
Alicia
Fox, but you know what I mean? Not really getting much time with them at all.
Yeah. As we continue to go down this card with more title matches, The New Day taking on Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows. I believe they're having an unofficial best-of-7 series on this run for the tag titles. Is it time to change the titles? I can see the only reason keeping them on New Day is to continue after this demolition record that they're now throwing out. But Anderson and Gallows, to me, it's just if you're not switching them at this point, I can't take this feud any longer.
No, you know what? And I've talked to people who are not big on the comedy aspect of what's been going on with the club and Gallows, and not just Gallows and Anderson, but also with the New Day. It's kind of like, for me, it's jumped the shark. I mean, I'm waiting for something new from the New Day. It's just the same old every week. And you know, people can blame the material, and people could blame, well, the club is not, you know, helping these segments along. They could blame the new stars. They could blame it on Rio. They could blame it on Lorraine. I don't care who you blame it on. It's just not entertaining anymore, for me at least anyway. So maybe a title change, a switch would benefit both teams.
I don't think the New Day, other than Xavier Woods' catchphrase, I don't think them having the tag titles means a thing to their level of popularity. Not at all. And instead, it could be them in the chasing for the titles instead. I mean, it's a very thin tag division on Raw, and you've kind of exhausted this program at this point with Anderson and Gallows in the challengers roles. Maybe flipping them if you want to get some legs out of this program beyond what they already have had.
And you've got Enzo and Cass kind of just coming in, throwing in their comedic one-liners here and there, and that's about it. I mean, like, something needs to change in the tag division there, that's for sure.
TJ Perkins will make his main roster debut on Sunday, taking on Brian Kendrick for the Cruiserweight title. Did you think it was a mistake not having Perkins on Raw Monday night? Instead, we got the Fatal 4-Way, which Kendrick won. I wasn't a big fan of the introduction on Monday night. I just don't think they really capitalized on anything that was built off the Cruiserweight Classic. And there's going to be a lot of people on Sunday that did not watch that and have never seen TJ Perkins.
Exactly, which is exactly what I was thinking. How do you not have your Cruiserweight champion, newly crowned Cruiserweight champion, introduced to your audience on Monday night?
Interview, feature.
Something, nothing. Those video packages that they did for him during the Cruiserweight Classic were amazing. You got to know the person. You got to know the character. You got to know a little bit about TJ Perkins. We got none of that. So now you're expecting the audience to be interested in a champion they know absolutely nothing about. And I get the fact that, there'll be a little bit of a curiosity factor to tune in to see what this guy's all about.
Wouldn't there be more of a curiosity
if
you had introduced this guy, told his story? Here's a guy that was homeless, that has now done the unthinkable, coming in, winning this championship, this grueling 32-man tournament.
Yeah.
There are probably fans that wouldn't even be able to pick this guy out of a lineup. You can't assume everyone watched this tournament because they didn't.
I know sometimes you're trying to try different things, but it's not brain science. Come on, man. Or rocket surgery.
I thought that was a missed opportunity. I also think that the choice in Brian Kendrick, him going for this title, to me, that is more of a long-term story as well, that you could tell that I think, doing it on Raw when you don't have the Bryan Danielson connection, it's tough. And here on 6 days' notice, I don't think people are really invested in Kendrick, who could have been someone that you could have told this over a longer period of time, this redemption story for him. And it's also coming so short after that great Kota Ibushi match and the presentation that's automatically going to be the comparison point. So, I mean, you go into this with an objective point of view, but I just think the way things were set up on Raw could have been handled so much better.
Yeah, always sometimes I try to understand why they do certain things that sometimes to me makes little sense, if any sense. But I kind of get the Brian Kendrick thing, but I guess the idea in their mind is that Brian Kendrick is an established star, former WWE superstar. So a win over him by TJ Perkins almost gives the Cruiserweight champion a little more credibility. Personally, I would have preferred to see him have a match maybe against Cedric Alexander or even a Rich Swann. I mean,
I would have gone with Neville, to be honest, to that same point you made about someone on the roster that everyone's familiar with, and they just go in and it's like, who is the top Cruiserweight? Whether you want to label Neville that or not, I think that would have been a great introduction for Perkins. There's a lot of ways you could have gone, and I think of the four options, I think Kendrick would have been my fourth, just because you could do this much more effectively down the road when you've established Kendrick's comeback story. And it's, where does he go after Sunday if he doesn't win this title?
Right.
So we will see where that one goes. Sami Zayn taking on Chris Jericho. I think this should be a very good match. Chris Jericho, this is one of the better runs of his career I feel he has had.
He is so entertaining, and he gets it. I mean, like, here's a guy who constantly reinvents himself. I mean, he takes time off. He comes back. Every time he comes back, it's a different Chris Jericho. And this list of Jericho, which is kind of like a takeoff of his 1004 holds list, which made him better than Dean Malenko. I almost expected Dean Malenko to come out and cut him off on
Had the computer printout paper too.
Yeah, exactly. But I like this. I like this a lot, and I like Sami Zayn. He's just a likable guy. What can you say about Sami Zayn? It's I don't know if he's at that point where you can insert him into a main event picture yet, but. I think that Sami Zayn is a future project, and Chris Jericho is a guy who can basically get anybody over.
Yeah, I think that this is probably what that will be utilized with Sami Zayn. He can get a big win on this show. And I mean, that's a match you can always go back to with Owens and Zayn for the title at some point. Right. I think some people are kind of exhausted on the feud just because you've seen quite a lot of it already this year. They had that great Battleground match. But it's something you can go with. I think Sami Zayn is very much in the same spot as Cesaro, who we'll talk about next, having that best of 7 series, which amazingly, it's going to come down to the 7th match.
Shocker.
And the timing works out to be on the pay-per-view. It's unbelievable, the scheduling.
Isn't it incredible how a set of circumstances kind of fall in line like that? Isn't that amazing? You got to love it. I've actually kind of quite enjoyed this series. Because
their match this past Monday, I thought, was the best of the 6.
I mean, they've been getting, that's the challenge with a best of 7 series, as you know, John. It's making each match different, and even though there's a common thread throughout all the matches, the Cesaro back injury and blah, 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 making each match different and telling a different story throughout each match within the confines of having a single story to tell. I thought they've been doing a great job at that. And like you said, I thought the week before the Cesaro needing to cheat to get past his limitations with the back injury, I thought that was cool. The one little thing, I know now just rambling here, the one little thing I liked about it is when Cesaro did put his foot on the rope, he didn't just drape it on the rope. He pushed off the rope. And if you think about it logically, if you were trying to get leverage by using the ropes, you would push off the ropes. And it always drove me nuts, even way back watching Ric Flair do it back in the old Mid-Atlantic days. I'm saying, why are they just throwing it on top? Why wouldn't they push off? It's more visual, I think, if you're pushing off and you see that rope moving, whatever, anyways. But I've been enjoying this series a lot. I was skeptical going in, but I'm liking it.
The winner gets a championship opportunity.
Which championship?
That's the question. They could be maybe a big weight cut is in store for one of them to take on T.J. Perkins. We'll find out. Does Cesaro get the victory in match number 7?
I would like to see Cesaro get the victory, and maybe he'd be the next guy in line for Rusev's United States Championship. I would imagine him and Kevin Owens would have some great matches if that was the direction to go, but I think that the main event picture is basically centered around Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, and maybe inserting Roman Reigns slowly back into that mix as well.
Yeah, I guess that's the one thing that you put all this time into this best of 7, that it culminates in a television match with Kevin Owens, which will be a spectacular match, or it's Cesaro going for the U.S. title, which then you should come up with a creative reason of why it's for the U.S. title, especially if it's Cesaro's choice.
Right.
So that rounds out the main card, and then, of course, Nia Jax and Alicia Fox on the pre-show. Right. I assume Nia Jax wins, Jimmy.
I would think so. I mean, like, this is they're trying to build her up as the next Awesome Kong type character, I guess.
Maybe they will attack each other with a box, much like 2 weeks ago on television, where Alicia Fox took a box and just rammed it into her face. Yeah, nearly just coming to the consoling of Nia Jax as she realized what she did on this live shot.
See, that made absolutely zero sense to me. Why wouldn't Nia Jax just kill her?
Well, she shoved her. So maybe it's all been pent up for this Clash of Champions show going down on Sunday.
There we go.
Where's your interest level for Clash of Champions on a scale of 1 to 10, Jimmy? I mean, the card looks very good on paper. I think the builds have been at the end of Raw, I wasn't exactly looking at my calendar to check the days off until Sunday night.
Again, it's almost like the interest level is there. I mean, I am interested in, like you said, on paper the card looks good from a wrestling standpoint. I'm sure we're going to get some really good matches, kind of like the previous SmackDown pay-per-view.
The question is the volume, too, of what you're being thrown out.
Yeah,
I don't know about you, but when I was done the Cruiserweight Classic, which was an awesome show, that finale was one of the best WWE shows this year, but by the end of that, I was just thinking to myself, after Backlash, after Raw, SmackDown, and now this on Wednesday night, you're just burnt out from so much. And a lot of it is good wrestling. They have a great roster at the moment, but it's just, I mean, we'll be back in 2 weeks with No Mercy.
Right.
And then it's Hell in a Cell. And the fact that they have a 2-week gap between shows is welcome. I feel that there's very little time in this era to really sit back and anticipate something because so much is thrown at you on a weekly basis.
Right, and going back to Backlash, which I thought was, from a wrestling standpoint, I thought was a good card, good pay-per-view. At the same time, it didn't have that special feel. It felt more like a Saturday night's main event as opposed to a major, or not, well, it was one of secondary pay-per-views, so I guess you would call it.
Yeah, but even 2 years ago for a pay-per-view that it's the culmination of a month of angles.
Right.
I mean, it didn't have that either.
And Sunday feels like it's going to be a TBS special, Clash of Champions. That's the feeling I'm getting from it, as opposed to this is a pay-per-view that I need to tune in and watch. And I guess, you talk about the business model, of course. The traditional pay-per-view business is a little bit different now with the WWE having their own network. Does that play into it, or is it just a matter of a little bit of complacency because nobody's really pushing? Back in the Monday Night War era, you had WCW pushing, Raw and pushing the WWE to do better, especially with 80. We saw this in the interview. Actually, this week I'm plugging the interview for Nash and Hall on the JBL Legends. They spoke about this, and they said, they got a little complacent, maybe got a little bit lazy because they weren't getting pushed. And then all of a sudden, you have Eric Bischoff and WCW come in and beat them 84 straight weeks in the ratings. That lit a fire under somebody's ass. And so maybe there needs to be a fire lit under their ass, and judging by what the ratings have been doing in the United States, I can't speak for Canada. They are dipping, and as much as people will say that they don't really matter, and to a certain extent, maybe, but when it comes to advertisers and when your main revenue source is
and it's also
television.
General interest. I mean, the Raw number, I think even more so than SmackDown, that reflects where your casual audience, what their interest level is. I mean, people are watching Raw that don't have the network. And that, to me, I mean, we're hitting 20-year lows for Raw.
Right.
It could get worse. I mean, next Monday, they've got not only football, but Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton, which is the best-built wrestling program thus far this year.
You know what? I feel terrible. I may have to PVR Raw next week. This is crazy. Only because that could
Jimmy,
be
you've got to live tweet the presidential debate.
Oh my goodness, that could be actually more entertaining than anything I've seen all year.
It's also last point here. What's going down this weekend, maybe the biggest match WWE is promoting, or not promoting, I should say, is the Brock Lesnar-Randy Orton match Saturday night at the house show in Chicago.
Right.
Zero mention of that this week on Raw or SmackDown.
I don't understand that unless it's going to be a last minute. You know what? We're going to broadcast this thing on the network, but at the same time,
if they're doing that and didn't mention it on TV, then they've lost their minds.
Exactly. Why wouldn't you mention it ahead of time? And so
and if that were to happen, it should be happening Sunday night and not Saturday night.
Right.
So there you have it, folks. Clash of Champions is this Sunday, and that is our thorough preview of the show happening in Indianapolis. You can tune into The Law midnight Eastern following the pay-per-view, where it'll be myself and Jason Agnew running down the show. We'll also have Jim Ross on the show because he is going to be promoting his one-man show, which is coming to Toronto Sunday, November the 20th, Survivor Series Day at Second City in Toronto. He'll chat about that with tickets going on sale, and he'll also share his 2 cents on what they do at Clash of Champions. So you can check all of that out, liveaudiowrestling.com. Follow him